Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Bison Workshop. I'm Bob. And we're back on the mill. And as you can see, we're getting progress. I just got this today. And ain't she pretty? Yeah, buddy. I'm tickled. Now, I've got a lot of stuff that's hooked up that's just temporary. Simply because there's some parts that needs to be replaced with different parts. I'm having a hard time deciding how I want to plug these things in. Right now, this was my option, but it's got 4 prongs, and I can use these for the Z-axis and the X-axis travel, simply because they are indexed. They will only be plugged in one way. It's got that little indent on it, so it can only be plugged in one way. So if they were both the same voltage, I wouldn't have a problem. I could just switch them. I don't want to throw 24 volts to the 12 volt by accident, because this is 24 volt. Actually, what I need to do is just change this to a 12 volt, and then I can have them both 12 volt. But this complicates things. It's working good, but it's not worth it to trade it out. It's working fine. So, you know, that thing works great. So, rather than to change the motor, what I can do is take the top 2 pins, number 1 and 2, and use them for 12 volt. And on the other plug, put the 24 volt on 3 and 4. That way, if you plug it in the 24 volt one and it's wired for 12 volt, it's not going to contact the 24 volt because those leads are not hooked up to nothing. So that way, if they don't work, then I know just switch the plug. So that's what I'm going to use for the Z and the X. And they just plug in the side here. But I've only got one in there right now. I needed to get this mill back up and running so I could use it. So I'm basically working on it in place. So I went and changed the potentiometer in this. Man, my throat's all messed up. My ears are all messed up. Hold on a minute. What we have here is the original potentiometer that came out for the controller for this motor, for the head. And it had a 470K 2 watt potentiometer. So I went and ordered 150K, and now, well, before, when it had this one in it, you could turn this halfway and it still hadn't started. Then when you turn a little bit more, then it would start. So I was missing half of my RPMs. So I've changed it with the 150K. Now watch what happens. It's all the way turned down. It's running. It shouldn't be running. So I'm wondering if maybe I need to go to a 200K. But this is on low. And I'm getting ready to change it. You hear it rattling? That just started today. So now I've got something else going on with them gears. And I can go in reverse. Hey, it stopped. Duh, I had it off. So I got this mounted today, and believe it or not, this was the frickin' bracket they had on it. It's not a bad bracket. It's got its faults though. What needs to happen is this cap needs to come out. And this is just old thin wall stuff. It's not really all that thick. The cap needs to come out and this needs to be rounded off. Like that. Now the reason I say that is because when you mount it to this bottom stud on the bottom of this DRO, that stud goes all the way through and has about that much thread sticking out. And when you go to put it flat, you know, perpendicular to this, then it mounts fine. But the minute you go to try to turn that to swivel it, these corners hits the back of the DRO and won't let it turn. So you only have that minute amount of travel to go side to side. So you can't really do any maneuvering with it. So I decided to scrap that idea and use this for something else one day. So I made my own bracket, and I'll show you here. So right there's my bracket. I mounted it to the front of this support beam to keep my shelf straight from sagging. And I just put that in there, drill a hole in it, and made that bushing to put in it and tighten that down. I still can move it somewhat. It's tight right now because I got it right where I want it. So I haven't got none of the axes hooked up. And this thing also came with a, let me put you on the tripod. Well, let's just go over here and look. Alright, so this is my scales, and my lighter I got mad at that over there. These are my scales and my readers, and this one's going to be a little challenging because that one needs to fit right there. I don't know how that's going to happen, but it has to fit there because the scales that came with my other DRO, like this one here, the reader, you can see there's the reader, and it's almost the same damn size as the reader that came out of it. I may have to put this one back on the mill until I can find a way to work with that. But somehow I have to put that scale and the reader right here. So I may have to eliminate this panel on the front. I don't know. We'll see. But it's going to be a bit challenging, I bet. These are going to be pretty self-explanatory. And I'll show you why. So basically the way this scale here attached, it just went up in there, and I have these slides that slides in there, and this bolted to it. So that worked really good. So now we got to make these work, and they're going to fit in here really nice, but I got to make a new set of T-nuts, and then I got to cut these down. So the bottom of this scale is going to rest right at the very bottom of the table, and you barely have enough room. It's almost touching the lockdown screw for the x-axis. Right now I've just got, I went and modified this, and I think it needs a little bit more modifications, but this is the original screw that went in it, and I just got it on a bit that I drove in it that was just a little smaller, so I just drove that in it, and it's in there pretty tight. And then I got one of these little thumb screws that I tighten it up with. So it rests right on top of that, just about. So these are the perfect size widthwise. So now I'm going to have to cut these down to where this end here comes to the edge of the table, the outside edge. So it'll be like that on both ends. So the next thing I have to do is make me another T-nut, with a different size thread, because it takes a smaller thread. It takes, not that one. It takes these little old tiny things. So they go in there and they stick out on the bottom there. And they got a recess in it where you can adjust it up and down to tram it in. So I've got to make a T-nut and thread it for this size screw, which I don't even know what it is yet. The only problem I have with that is this is not a T-nut. This is a V-nut. And that's a V slot. So this will only go in just like that, and for some reason they keep catching right there, and I've done trimmed everything out and it's filed and everything's good, but these things keep catching. So I've got to make a new set of T-nuts, so I'm probably going to make mine out of aluminum. That'll be easier to work with, and I got to make that V shape and thread it, and that's going to be tedious. That's why I needed my mill back up and running, so I went ahead and hooked my control box up. So now I've got a few bugs to work out so far. So I got to get these mounted. This one goes there, and it's going to work nice. I don't know how I'm going to mount my readers. I do have a hole right here drilled and tapped, so I can probably try to use that existing hole or these other two existing holes that's in there. My head's all up in the way, right? So we'll figure it out. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? The side's not going to be too awful bad because they're already threaded. I may have to change the location a little bit to offset it, because I'm sure that these screws are not going to fit, because I know I didn't, mine's bigger than that, so I know that I'm going to have to probably bring it up and drill another set of smaller holes above it, something like that. I believe that would work. So but my shop is a mess today, man. I got stuff all over the four-wheeler and everything. But this thing also came with something else that I'm a little confused about. This thing's got an RPM speed sensor. And it does have a spot on the back of it that shows, or that this plugs into. However, I don't see no magnet, unless it's stuck to something. That could be possible that it's stuck to one of these metal. But I don't think I need to use that. I already have a speed sensor. I don't need a speed sensor. So, because right here is going to be my speed sensor. I don't have it hooked up yet. But I do have well, that was working. What the hell happened? Well, something just happened. I just lost power. Yeah, see, I don't understand. Every time I turn around, something else is happening. So, I'm getting ready to change the motor. I'm going to use a treadmill motor that I adapted for this. And I ordered these. In two different orientations. I think one is 20 gear. One is 40 gear, or 40 teeth. And we're going to remodify this. We're going to change and get rid of these plastic gears, and we're going to run a belt. I don't know how we're going to do this yet. I may have to make a pulley of my own that is exactly like the gear on the left mill. I think that I can modify this, or modify my gear to mimic this, because all it is a round circle with a key slot. So it just slides down in there and lays there, and the top of this actually holds it in place. So that's the part we're going to have to overcome, because once I remove this plate, and this is not going to have that to hold it down. So we're going to have to figure out a way to pin this in place with some kind of a bearing. I don't know yet. So I may have to make my gear. So that's why I got that. So I got a big old chunk of aluminum here that's going to probably be used for pulleys for my lathe, because yes, it's getting DC motor too. Got a lot to do. But I'm sure I'll get there. But you know, I'll probably not ever use it reverse unless I'm backing a tap back out. That's really the only time I ever use reverse. So normally, now I've got my switch so that when it's running to the left, the front of the chuck is going to the left. If it's going to the right, the chuck is going to the right. So that means backwards. So that's going to be my go-to spot right there. So now this thing's loud and chattery until I get that stuff taken care of. Alright, so that's low. Turn it off. Turn it to high. Don't really sound any different, but I can't tell until I get a RPM meter on. So once I get an RPM meter, then I'll be able to tell more about what it's doing. But I normally run it on low anyway. I never run my bits real fast. Low's pretty much all I need. So we're getting there, guys. I'm probably not going to use the RPM. However, I got to mount an RPM for this, a sensor like that, somewhere here. I was hoping that I could use this sensor right here. But like I said before in my last video, is this one's got a white one, a black one, and a red one. And the sensor that came with this has a blue, a brown, and a black. So I don't know which ones to use for which. So maybe it'd be best to just try to modify this, because this motor's probably going to be cocked off to the side here. So I can still use this housing as a way to house a bearing or something, so I can keep the gear straight, or what. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I may be able to thread the top of that shaft and put a bolt in it to hold the gear down. I could do that. I don't know if that's feasible or not. So I'm going to remove this box. This box ain't going to be here. I'm going to take it off, and I'm just going to, actually, you know what? No, it's going to have to be over here to the side. I was thinking about trying to utilize this box to put the motor up in it and sticking out the top, but that ain't going to work. So I can use these existing holes to make a bracket to hold the motor. So I kind of want it off to this side, because over here I don't want it in the way of my switch. I don't want it in the way of my quill. So I don't really want it in the way of this motor over here. I want to be able to see that motor and see how everything's working. So we got a long way to go, and I think we're getting there. But don't that just look sexy as hell, man? I'll be so tickled to be using that thing. My main thing is I'd like to learn that hole pattern option, because drilling holes for me and getting them where they're supposed to be is a big chore. So, but we're doing a lot of changing to this thing, and there may be times where I'll have to do some milling on the drill press, and I don't like milling on a drill press because it's not set up for that. It can be done with very light cuts, but I'm trying to keep this up and running so that I can still use it and make parts for everything. So the next thing I got to make is these damn things, and I'm not looking forward to that. So I'm going to have to cut me a piece that's that wide, the widest side of it, and then put it in the mill crooked to mill it the V in it. Anyway, I had a guy bring me some stuff today. He wanted me to work on for him, so I got a job ahead of me. That's what he wants made. He wants 20 of those. And that's a 3/4 inch steel rod, solid steel rod. And he brought me all the pieces to do 20 of them. He wants me to weld them together for him. That's going to be time consuming. But now that I got my mill up and going, I can start to work on that tomorrow. But I still ain't out of the woods with my sickness yet. I'll put that back in the right bag. Yeah, I may not have to use this RPMs because the digital readout has it. So if I have to put a bracket up here to use a sensor up here, I don't know how I'm going to attach that bracket. It's probably going to have to be some kind of a, maybe a L bracket right here mounted to that screw here, in addition to what's already mounted to it, and have it come out and down, and then I can take this magnet here that came with it, I have it stuck to the front of that panel, and have it stuck there like that, and put the sensor here somewhere, because remember, this motor's not going to be there no more. So I could actually probably just put the sensor bracket right here on the back side of this and have it pointing backwards or off to the side. Probably be more off to the side, simply because the gear's going to come out right here, so it's going to have to be off to the side. It's not got really enough room. Now, I don't know if it's possible to get down here to put something, or once I get this plate off, I'll be able to see in there and see if I can modify something in there. I don't know yet. Once I get this plate back off, then I'll look down in there and see if there's another place I can attach it. But it's going to be a task. I may have to use this existing hole right here to make some kind of a bracket here to put that sensor in like that. So that's why I wanted to use this one. I just don't know how to wire it. I don't understand what the wires are for. If I knew what each wire was for and what they did and the pin out on both of them, then I could probably wire it to the other one. But I would have to figure out how to wire this to one of those DB plugs, DB9 plug. This right here, let me put this magnet away before I lose it. This is a DB9 plug. Now that looks awfully like a old serial port for a mouse, because the mouse used to have a plug that looked just like that. So I don't know if there's a difference in how many pins there are. I think there's 9 pins in them. And that one looks like it's got 9 pins. So, but I could probably mount that right there somewhere, just like that. And use these 2 existing holes here to mount it. We'll see. So, Grizzly getting ready to get a makeover, or is getting her makeover. So, that pretty much does it. When I start working stuff, doing stuff like this, man, my shop turns into a freaking hurricane. I'm not organized. And people who are organized actually complain about my unorganization. You know what? I really don't care. It's worked for me for 40, 50 years. Been working on stuff since I was, like, my first carburetor tear down was in the basement of my mom and dad's house in Glen Burnie, Maryland. Under the steps in a little closet, I had a little shop. the bench wasn't no bigger than half of this one. And, you know, I mean, it's under steps. So, it was the closet that was underneath the basement steps. And my dad worked at the Bob Bell Ford, and he used to bring me carburetors to just tear apart and put back together. So, I was 10 or 11, something like that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed watching me ramble on about my meal. I don't know what happened there a while ago. Basically, all I did was turned it off, turned it back on. So that power supply, there's a reason it was taken out of one of my computers. And I think now I remember why I took it out of my computer, because every once in a while it would shut down. And it was causing me problems with my computer. So I think it's overheating. I can feel air coming out of it now. And it's cold air too. So it's got good ventilation. There's actually an inch from the top of this to the bottom of this board, and that fan cover or vent cover is right there, so it's sucking everything from back there down through it and out. So that works. Actually, it probably should be blowing in the opposite direction. Because it would have an easier time pulling in chips from the top. And of course I can fix that. I can just get a piece of foam, filter foam. In fact, I got a piece right here. I can just take that and slide it up in underneath there and behind there. And put it over top of it. That's filter material. Anyway. That's where we're at. That's how far we've gotten so far on the grizzly mill. I just bolted this up with 2.5-inch carriage bolts, because I wanted the flat tops on the top so I can still use my shelf area without a nut up there or a head of a bolt. So it's in there pretty solid. It ain't going nowhere. But everything's working right now. I got my travel, it's working. Got my Z-axis, it's working. Got my motor, it's working. A little bit of tweaking to it. I got to change that. It's almost there, man. It's like I can't turn it far enough to turn it off. So usually if you turn it to the off, like let's say for instance this here, if I turn that to all the way down, it's not doing nothing. It's basically off. So that's the way I like for it to run. This one don't actually work very bad. It starts spinning at about 1/4 of a turn. Right there is where it starts. But you probably I could probably hold it with my hand. Yeah, see, I can hold it with my hand. It's starting to get some torque. Yeah, it's taking some torque. So everything's working now. I got to do the RPM gauge, but now I have to reconsider what I'm going to do here, because I think I'm going to go ahead and use this one. Because if it's there, why not? Because then it will be all lit up and right there in front of me. So that would mean I did all that for nothing. So, or put this in for nothing. Oh well. Maybe we can, I don't know if you can daisy chain them from one to another and have this gauge work and that gauge work. But that would mean different plugs, different lengths of wire, more wires. Get on that. I already got enough here I got to figure out what I'm going to do with. The Z-axis has to be able to move up and down. Or no, the Z-axis motor don't have to be up and down because this is stationary. But this, however, is not stationary and it moves up and down. So I have to make sure that these cables have enough leeway for them to run. So, I don't know why I keep putting you on that direction. So, I'm thinking about trying to incorporate a chain like I did here on the x-axis and put one here for that. And I do have another chain that I'm getting ready to take off of that 3D printer I rebuilt. So, but I'm going to try to incorporate a chain in here. And I'm thinking about trying to use some of that rubber that the air compressors was wrapped in. It's white, but who cares? I can take that rubber and make a strip however wide the chain is, and it's real flimsy rubber, so it'll stretch really easy with just the slightest bend. So I could probably take and glue a strip of that all the way up the chain to keep chips from going in it. Like right here, I need to do that with this right here because chips get down in there. Now it's not causing any problems yet, but it's probably just a preference thing. But I would like to at least get a chain on here so that I can put these cables through the chain and it'll move up and down. We're only talking, let's see, right there's the highest I can go. And that's as low as I'll ever go. Unless I have the bit or the vise off. So let's see if I can go all the way down. No, so it stops there. So I need to get a limit switch there and a limit switch up top. Speaking of limit switches, I unhooked my motor from my switch when I took all this down. And 2 wires, red and black. Well, that's what I had left when I went to go put it back to the switch. For some reason, now my limit switches don't work on the x-axis. So, how the hell did that get screwed up? All I did was took the black and red wire off the switch and I put the black and red wire back on the switch. So, I need to figure out why my limit switches ain't working. I gotta have them working. It's not necessary, but I like that option. So I'm going to try to keep that option. Anyway, this has probably gotten too long. I'm going to go over here and get my Trump coffee. And then I'm going to bid you guys farewell for tonight. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. You guys have a good one. Later.